Good afternoon. This is Joseph Donnelly from the Jersey Free Public Library. I'm the Adult Services Librarian and team leader of the accessibility team. Today I'm introducing you Rachel Morgan, who has an ED and a CAS and a BCTS, and she is the founder of the Adam Morgan Foundation. Good afternoon, Dr. Morgan, and how are you?
Good afternoon, Joseph. I want to thank you and the New Jersey Public Library for inviting me to do this webinar. I'm really excited about it and really happy to finally meet you.
Most welcome.
So today, what the topic is about is life skills. So before we kind of get into that, I do want to tell you a little bit more about me. I do have my doctorate degree in education and instructional leadership, with an emphasis in Andragogy, which Andragogy is self-directed competency-based learning. It's actually adult learning theory. And it's really about helping adults, no matter if you have a disability or not, become more of a self-directed learner, which I thought very well works nicely with talking about life skills and working with individuals on the spectrum with helping them gain more independence. So as far as my professional career, I do run a nonprofit organization. It's named after my son, Adam Morgan, which you can see a picture of him here. And he just turned 19 a couple weeks ago. So he is an adult on the spectrum. And he is non-speaking. And he does have some other co-occurring things that are going on. But as a non-speaking adult, he graduated from high school last year with a 3.4 GPA. With a regular ed diploma. He was the first non-speaking student to take the ACT. And even though they messed up his accommodations, he still got an 18 on it, which was pretty good. So he got into both colleges that he applied for and is the first non-speaking autistic to attend the University of Missouri, St. Louis, and got a 4.0 his first semester. So he is doing very, very well. We definitely push for independence and making sure that he is getting all of his life skills too. So throughout the presentation, you will hear me talking a lot about him and our experiences. I actually, even though I do have, my master's, my doctoral degree, I'm a certified autism specialist and a board-certified Tele-Practice Specialist. And those are all great and good and wonderful certifications. But my biggest expert in the field that I go to is my son. He teaches me a lot. And my belief is that individuals that are autistic are the ones that are the experts in the field, and we need to be listening to their voice very heavily because they're the ones who tell us quite a bit. All right. So the first thing I wanted to address before we go into this, because I know there's a lot of controversy around it, is people first language versus identity first language. And to me, it's a preference. It depends on who you are. As far as my son goes, I mean, it doesn't really bother him when people use people first language. However, he has told me that identity first language is what he prefers. And you will hear a lot of the adult autistic community will tell you that they prefer identity first, that they are autistic and they are proud of it. And it's part of who they are. There are still a lot of people out there that prefer people first language. So I just kind of wanted to address that and let you know I will do my best. I kind of go back and forth just to make sure that everybody is comfortable. I don't want to offend anybody. And I want to try to, use everybody's preferred language. So I usually in presentations will flip back and forth, person with autism, but then you will also hear me say autistic individuals. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I think it's really important because we have to try our best to make everybody comfortable when we're doing these presentations. So, and if anybody has any questions, you can throw it in the chat box as well. And Joseph, if you'll help me with that, I'm fine with that because I know sometimes you have a question and if you don't ask it right then and wait till the end, you might forget it. And I'm fine with that. So, okay. So the first thing that we probably need to look at are what are life skills? What is, I call it adulting. We all have to adult, right? We all have things that we need to do. Some are more fun than others. So if you kind of look at it, there's, to me, kind of 8 categories. You have health and safety, you have the career path and employment, you have self-determination and advocacy, peer relations, socialization, social communication, community participation in personal finance, transportation, leisure, recreation, and home living skills, chores, hygiene, things like that. There's a lot to life skills as an adult. You've got them in your home, you have them in your community. If you're doing post-secondary education, you have them on campuses, you have them in employment. There's a lot to life skills. And to me, if we're going to tackle this, if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. Everyone is an individual. Everyone has strengths. Everyone has areas of concerns. We all do, whether you're on the spectrum or not. It doesn't really matter. And we don't all live in a bubble. We all need help. I don't know how to fix my car, so I call, but I've learned how to call someone that can help me do that. So with those life skills, it's not about necessarily being great at everything, but it's about knowing what your resources are out there. So when we look at adulting, to me, what I would rather look at instead of what are all those life skills are for people on the spectrum, young adults, what are the likely barriers? Why are maybe they struggling in an area? That's what we need to ask ourselves first, because then you can start working the problem. And what I've really done is broke it down into 5 areas for us to look at those barriers and what might be happening, and then look at those strategies that we might be able to put in place so that we can help. So the first one is sensory processing concerns, which we'll go into a little further, each one of these 5 areas. The second one is a brain-body disconnect. So what we've really learned is that autism is a motor difference. It's an impulsive body. I think some people look at it as a cognitive disorder. And when you really look at the definition and even the DSM-5, it plainly states in there that it is not necessarily tied to a cognitive disorder. I will tell you that's a very small percentage. It is more of sensory processing concerns and that brain-body disconnect. So we have to speak to the body differently than we do to the brain. So a young adult, we got to look at this as you need to assume and presume competency. So you need to talk to them like you would any other young adult. However, if they have a motor difference or an impulsive body, you need to speak to that differently. And I'll go into some strategies later on that. The third one is communication difference. So non-speakers may need to use technology or a letterboard to communicate. It's really important to know that you have to include them in on that process on what communication method works for them, because no one else can decide that. And what I need to let you know too, if you notice, I spoke and talked about my son as a non-speaker. I don't use the word he's nonverbal, because 93% of all communication for every person on the face of the planet, 93% is nonverbal. It's our gestures, it's our tone, it's our facial expressions. And a lot of our non-speakers have excellent nonverbal skills. It's just we're always listening with our ears for the speech instead of looking and listening with our eyes at maybe their nonverbals or what their body might be telling us. So I'm here to let you know that our non-speakers does not equal non-thinking. And I will go into that a little bit further on exactly what that looks like. The fourth one is a lack of access and education with technology. This is the one that I kind of hinted at when I threw this out here on Facebook that I was going to be talking about this today. Because here in Missouri, we have started in the Adam Morgan Foundation a new pilot program as of January of this year to teach adults with disabilities, the autism or other disabilities, on how to use technology. We have been giving out tablets through our Apple a Day program now for about 5 years. And we have a lot of adults that have been coming back to us with the tablet still in the cellophane wrapper from months before that we gave it to them, because no one has helped them open it up, turn it on, and shown them how to use it. And I'm going to go into a little deeper on some of the data that we have collected the last 4 months and some of the new barriers that I was not even aware of when we're talking about adults with autism or any other disability. On the new barriers, they're probably not new, but ones that came to light on that. Because technology is in everything that we do. And our young people with autism are not being taught how to utilize and access technology for a productive manner. They're only using it for entertainment purposes. And we have to change that if they're going to be a part of adult world. The last one, the fifth one, is lack of understanding. And in my opinion, I don't think it is a lack of understanding. It could be a barrier, but I'm telling you, I think this is a very, very small percentage. And I really don't think that it is a lack of understanding. I think it's most likely a lack of opportunity to be engaged in those life skill activities. So that's not an area that I'm going to go into depth with, because I think it is a hugely small percentage. And we need to kind of take our mindset and shift things in a different format in order to do different. And that's really a very minimal one. So the top four I'm going to be speaking a little bit more at length on. So the first area is sensory processing disorder, or sensory processing, the motor planning. And this is a quick slide, couple slides I just want to talk about, and maybe some areas that most people aren't thinking about as well. Most of us, when we think about sensory or senses, we think of the main five: smelling, tasting, seeing, hearing, and touching, right? Well, a lot of our individuals that are on the spectrum have heightened sensory in the internal body-centered senses. And we're talking about vestibular senses, that inner ear. You see a lot of autistic individuals who need movement in order to engage in some of their life skills or any type of activity. Proprioception, they need maybe a weighted blanket, or they need that extra input into their muscles and joints in order to have more control over their bodies, so it's not impulsive. And the third one is interoception, internal organs. This one was a very interesting one for me. And my daughters actually turned me on to a young lady. Her name is Paige, actually on TikTok, who is autistic. And she puts out some really great videos. And she did one particularly when it came to life skills and hygiene things, or even daily routines such as eating, that really brings to light and explains what interoception sensory processing disorder is for that particular one, that I had never thought of. And once I got this education from her, it totally made sense. So I want you to think about this. This young lady explains it as she actually had to put into routines of her day on times to eat, because her interoception system was not alerting her. Her organs weren't alerting her that she was hungry, that she didn't have that feeling of being hungry. She also doesn't have the feeling of being full. So sometimes she would overeat and get sick. And it's because her sensory system was not working properly in order to send her those signals. Can you imagine not feeling hungry or not knowing when you're full? And the same went, she talked about, with going to the bathroom. She had to plan on when to go and make her body do it, because she didn't have those sensations. So as you can see, with some of those life skills, with those daily hygiene activities, it could be a sensory processing disorder where they're not getting the feeling like maybe you and I might, on our bodies telling us that we need food, or that we're full, or that we need to go to the bathroom. So when you realize that, now you can probably realize that, oh, we can support our loved ones or the people that we work with in helping them put a routine to train our bodies. So hopefully that makes a little sense with talking to the body differently than you do the brain. Because this young lady has very good speech, and she articulated it very well. She goes, I know I need to eat. I know I need to go to the bathroom. Cognitively, I understand that, but my body isn't giving me the signals to be able to do that. So I just thought that was very, very interesting, how sensory can play into kind of impeding some of those life skills that we do on a day-to-day basis. So as far as processing, as you can see, sensory, you can have under-responsive, meaning you're hyposensitive. Like my son, for example, he can eat hot food. It can be scalding hot. He can throw it in his mouth and it not even impact him. It might burn his inside of his mouth, but it doesn't register with his sensory system. Then you have the over-responsive hypersensitivity. Now, he's also hypersensitive to cold foods. He does not eat ice cream. He does not like ice in his drinks. Cold sends him over the edge. So you can actually be hyposensitive and hypersensitive in one area of your body, like my son is with his oral motor. So we do have to help and support him on that. You also have the sensory craving, where somebody might, crave more stimulation than other people. Doesn't necessarily have to be children, but it could be movement. They need extra movement. even as an adult, than maybe other people. So it's finding ways which recreation can be, and we'll talk about that, leisure and recreation skills, and maybe some things that adults can do to help them get that sensory input that they need in order to have more control over their impulsive bodies. Now, I'm not going to show this video for anybody who's on the call, and Joseph also has my PowerPoint. You can either email me or Joseph, and I have no problem with sharing this PowerPoint. This is a 30-minute video on the brain-body disconnect from Julie Sando out in California, and she talks about unlocking purposeful communication. It is a great video. I strongly suggest that you guys tackle this one. It's just phenomenal. And she really talks about how we have to build muscle memory. Again, it's talking to the body, the autistic body, differently than you do the brain. We need to assume they understand everything, but they have very impulsive bodies that tend to take over and communicate or miscommunicate things that they don't want it to. And that's when we get the behaviors that we don't want to see. And it's because they're frustrated with their body. My son a lot of times will hit himself in the head if he's minimally speaking, he has echolalia, so some things will pop out of his mouth that he may not necessarily want to, and he gets mad at his body and he will hit himself in the head. That self-injurious behavior is telling people, look, that is not what I wanted to communicate. And can you imagine being in your body, understanding everything, wanting to say something different, but your body just takes over and says things it doesn't want to? So that is something that Julie really tackles in a more in-depth way. And for a 30-minute video, she covers a lot. And she really, really talks to you about strategies on how you can help with that brain-body disconnect, with the way that you as a support person or a loved one in the field can interact or react differently to the autistic person. Okay. So the brain-body disconnect can be very, very complicated, but she really sums it up in a very good fashion, and she's a great resource for you out there. So I did want to point that out. So then we move to the third piece here, and this is communication differences. And like I had told you guys before, non-speaking does not equal non-thinking. That is such a myth. A lot of people look at my son and like, well, he doesn't speak, so he probably doesn't understand what's going on. I want to let you know this, and you can ask any speech therapist on the planet and they will tell you the same thing. The act of speaking right now, me speaking to you, is 100% a motor function. It has absolutely 0%, nothing to do with cognition skills. And a speech therapist will tell you that. So speech is not cognition. Speech does not equal how someone thinks. It's speech, it's motor. It's just like someone who maybe utilizes a wheelchair and is not walking. That's a motor function. It is not tied to how someone processes information as far as their cognitive skills. So when you frame it up that way, I'm hoping it kind of makes you think a little differently, like, oh, okay, so if speech is motor and it's not tied to cognition, then we should not assume that they're not able to think and process information. So AAC, augmentative communication devices, technology, letterboards, etc., can be used in place of speech to open up communication misunderstandings. My son uses a iPad to type, to communicate. And he has a YouTube channel, which you'll see some links later on in this PowerPoint. He has a YouTube channel called Tech Talk with Adam Morgan. It has some amazing videos there. They are all of him typing. He shows you how he types. He shows you why he needs a little bit of assistance at his risk because he has some motor differences because of his other diagnoses. But it's him typing. It is not me. And he was the student commencement speaker at his graduation last year. And it was a very powerful speech. And it is, I actually have it on, he has it on his YouTube channel if you want to check it out. And he talks about technology and how it's opened up a whole new world for him. So we also have to think about some of our friends who maybe have decent speech. They may be a literal or a black and white thinker, very factual, and they may have difficulty with the gray of life, predicting and analyzing information. And this can be directly linked to barriers to life skills, because as we know in socialization and even employment, in learning those soft skills, this can be a barrier for them. So we don't want to look at it as a deficit. We want to look at it as a difference and understand them, because that's what's going to help us to interact and react differently to be able to help them in those areas for their life skills. The Urban Dictionary, metaphors and sarcasm can be very, very difficult for people on the spectrum as well. So that is something that can be a taught skill, but we have to be aware that that's, again, a communication difference. Pragmatic language, tone, inflection, facial expressions. So I want to bring this up to you guys because this hit me a few years ago when we're talking about communication differences in the autistic mind. And pragmatic language is very difficult, and predicting and analyzing information is very difficult. And I want you to think about what technology has done to us as a society for a minute. And when you really think about it, technology, has it not made us socialize differently than we used to? So what we've done with technology is, aren't we hiding behind a screen? Aren't we masking there? And there's that, we're losing that pragmatic language. You don't get tone in an email. You don't get inflection. You don't get facial expressions. You get words, right? You get sentences, and you have to read into that. So using technology, actually, if you think about it, we kind of now socialize and interact with our world more like people on the spectrum, because pragmatic language is taken out of the equation, isn't it? So I really started thinking about this several years ago, and they call themselves Asperger World out in Silicon Valley. Google and Microsoft are specifically hiring people with autism to code for them. And if you think about it, people on the spectrum have been very instrumental in the innovation and the creation of technology. And I'm here to tell you, they've really brought us into their world and leveled the playing field and didn't tell anybody. So why aren't we using technology more to reach and interact and react with people on the spectrum? It's a thought, isn't it? Because life skills really rely on technology. And this gets to my fourth piece, which with our new technology pilot program, we have some data now. And here in Missouri, I will let you know many of the autistics that we are working with, autistic people we're working with as young adults, have never had their own email address. They don't own a cell phone. They don't own a computer or a tablet. They have never had a social media page. Google platforms. I actually had a client the other day look at me and go, "What's Google?" I was blown away. And I want you to think about, when was the first time you personally got your first email address? Mine was decades ago. Decades ago. Kids in schools are now getting them in second and third grade, an email address, right? So we have these young adults in their young 20s, they've never had their own email address. So I'm like, okay, in our new technology program, we got to get you an email address. Well, guess what? I think because of COVID and all of the two-factor authentication codes and everything that we need now, in order to get an email address, guess what you need now? You need a cell phone number, because it texts you to make sure it's you. Well, our young people don't have a cell phone. I'm thinking to myself, what if I said to their support staff, let me take your phone and tablet from you. How well could you function in the adult world? Most people, when they get up in the morning, that's the first thing they do is check their phone. They don't even go to the bathroom first, right? I mean, you cannot live in adult properly with life skills today in our society without having access to technology. Now, I have met some young people with a disability that maybe share an email with their mom or dad, but guess what? They've never checked it. They don't know. They're coming out of school. Now, schools give them an email, but they're not in the gen ed curriculum. They're getting an alternative curriculum and they don't check their email. No one has them check their email. They don't know what it is. They don't know how to use it. It is foreign to them, okay? So in today's day and age, to me, You cannot teach independent life skills without someone having their own technology footprints, kind of their social security number. They have to have their own email and cell phone. Had a couple people that have had their own tablets, right? Well, guess what? They got locked out of it because it was tied to another person, whether it was staff or a guardian's information. So guess what? We're trying to get in and it's texting a code to someone I don't know. And now we can't even get into the tablet to use it. So this is a really big new barriers that kind of have come to the forefront that we're having a problem with. So we need to give them a social identity on social platforms in technology world in order for them to learn life skills, okay? So what we're finding is maybe some of these adults have a tablet they can use, but they're only using it to watch YouTube, or somebody putting on, a TV show for them to use or to watch. They're not using it in a productive, independent fashion. Why? Why is this not happening? Well, what we're finding out in our pilot program, because we address something no one else is addressing, and that's the beliefs, values, and attitudes of the people supporting them. Okay, so technology is an essential life skill that needs to be accessible and taught. So how do we do that? Well, we have to start with the support staff and the parents and the guardians of our young adults and helping them understand they're very capable of using this. I understand you might be fearful that they might make mistakes or post something, but we have to teach them how to use it. They are capable. So without technology, I want you to think about this. You cannot function in the adult world as we use technology for everything, for shopping, grocery, clothes, household items, you name it, you can buy it online. Transportation, if you don't have a phone, you can't use Uber and Lyft. You can't call them up. You have to use the app. Banking, online banking, you can set up your own bank account from sitting behind your computer. You don't even have to go there. Socialization, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat. Employment, most employers, you have to apply online. You can't even go in anymore and ask for a paper application, especially with COVID, everything's gone online. For daily work activities, for school, for post-secondary, everything's web-based. Doctor's appointments, guys, think about that. When I set up a doctor's appointment, I get text messages that tell me and remind me of my appointment. Well, if you have an adult with a disability and they don't have a phone, how can they learn that life skill of managing their own doctor's appointments? They can't. Calendar invites, reminders, entertainment, news, YouTube, Netflix, restaurants, Grubhub, Uber Eats. If you think about this, does this list not almost match everything right here? It does, doesn't it? So why am I meeting person after person on the spectrum that doesn't even know what an email is? They don't have a cell phone. They can't access anything. This, to me, is at the core of it. We have to teach them how to use this. And our biggest barriers are right here. A lack of belief, value, and attitude from our support staffs, the people, and it's not that they're bad people. They don't know what they don't know. So we actually here in Missouri with our pilot program, our assessments have nothing to do with technology. They have to do with the relationship between the guardians and the staff that work with the autistic individuals. It has to do with their relationship, okay? And a big point of that is, and this is where we're really realizing staff is kind of having a wake-up call. A couple of the questions on the assessment, they go back and forth. One of them was asked to staff, does your client with autism understand your point of view? Okay, and it's on a Likert scale. And most of the time we're hearing either sometimes or not often, especially if the individual is a non-speaking individual. And then on the flip side, does the person with autism understand your point of view as staff? And a lot of times we're getting sometimes or not often. So guess what? If you can't understand each other's point of view, it's going to be very difficult to engage in any learning opportunity or any life skill activity, isn't it? Because if you don't understand each other, you're not going to be able to move forward with learning anything new. So we're actually addressing these life skills and these important things at the core, because you can't do different until you think differently. And we're learning from people who have had some experience. So videos from Adam, my son, on life skills and strategies that have helped him. So when we talk about hygiene tips, I've kind of talked to you a little bit about the one young lady on the spectrum who's autistic, Paige, who shared with us some of the sensory things. And I've put some links here. One of them on hygiene tips for my son is, he blatantly says, I do not have a cognitive issue, but I do have an impulsive body and I have a lot of sensory issues. For instance, even just like showering, he gets very sensory distracted, he says, from the water. The water hits him and he just wants to stand there. It's kind of like he becomes paralyzed with the water on him because he's enjoying it. And it's not that he doesn't know what he has to do in the shower, but he does need verbal reminders in order to, continue. That's a body issue, not a brain issue. And so we have to follow his lead, and he tells us what types of, reminders or things that he needs so that he can build the muscle memory in order to do that. Another one is he talks about CrossFit. He has started CrossFit. That's a leisure recreation skill. And there's a video there, and he will share with you why that helps him. And to be honest with you, it's helped him control his body when he is out in public or anxiety kicks in, because he's more fit, and he's actually lost probably about 25 pounds as well. And he just feels better in his body. And so that helps when he is out and doing other types of activities. So he kind of shares with you the sensory input that he gets from doing that. Then we have a communication strategy and tip from Adam on how to become a preferred communication partner and help those who maybe need a different form of communication method, like an iPad or a letterboard, on how you can help somebody with that. Then he also has a different video on tips for a communication partner for someone who's non-speaking to help them. And that's more about the relationship than anything else. So he kind of helps you there. And I really think it's important that you hear his voice in this presentation and not just coming from me. And then I also put the link there for you on his Tech Talk channel, just if you want to subscribe to it and check out some of his other videos, like his commencement speech and things like that. So I did want to share that because I think it's really important that we hear from autistic individuals themselves. So as far as strategies and teaching life skills, because there's a lot of them that we can teach, it starts with the people supporting the autistic adults. So you have to look within yourself and examine your own beliefs, values, and attitudes. That's hugely important because I meet a lot of people who they don't believe that the person that they're supporting is capable of doing certain things. So guess what ends up happening? They do it for them. And even in our technology program, I've explained to staff and I've told our clients as well, we're going to make you a little uncomfortable. We're going to get you out of your comfort zone. And that's okay. That's when you learn the most. When you learn the most, you're disoriented. You're kind of like, what is happening here? But that gets you involved. And we really want to help the autistic adults become more self-directed. And in order for that to happen, they're going to have to make mistakes. And that hasn't always happened. If you look at, some of the assessments that we do, when we kind of look at the results, many of our clients tell us they were never taught how to learn. They were never taught how to problem solve in the school setting. It was more about compliance and it was engagement. So we have to kind of switch that. And I'm going to talk about engagement here shortly because it's going to be a really crucial part of this. So the other thing is teaching life skills is you have to find out the true why someone's having difficulty with that particular life skill. Sensory could be, impeding maybe hygiene skills, but maybe it's not sensory. Maybe it's more pragmatic language when it comes to employment type skills or interviewing skills. So you have to find out the why. You have to kind of problem solve that first before you put strategies in place. You also have to assess your relationship with your loved one that's on the spectrum or the people that you're serving. There has to be mutual trust and respect. And our assessments actually hone in on trust and respect as well. That is really, really huge because if you don't have that mutual trust and respect, then you're not going to get anywhere anyway. Understanding each other's point of view, we've gone over that. And you really have to look at yourself and find out if you're more learner-centered. Are you meeting them where they are? Are you listening to what their life goals are? Are you letting them lead the learning opportunity? and you're just there as a resource and a support, or are you taking over and driving that process? So you want to look at that as well. Also remember, if there's a body impulse issue, you need to build muscle memory and talk to the body differently than you do the brain. There's a lot of times I'll look at my son when he's frustrated and I'll say, your brain and body did not connect on that one. You wanted to say something different. I hear you, take a breath and start over. That way you're acknowledging this is not a cognitive issue. I see that your body just did something different than your brain didn't want to. And you will see the individual immediately calm down and probably look at you like, oh, wow, you get it? That dials the anxiety down instead of dialing it up, okay? You can be positive, you can be supportive, you can be inspirational, you can be influential, but you cannot make someone change their behavior or force it. That is up to them. I will tell you, I mean, sure, you can make someone do that, what you want them to do, but that's called manipulation. And that's not good for your relationship. So we do want to look at this in a different way. It's not about compliance, it's about engagement. So I did this slide for a reason, because I thought it was very, very interesting. And we talk about in schools or even in adults about putting positive behavior support strategies in place, right? Well, I wrote this down and it made a lot of sense to me. And usually when I throw this in a presentation, people are like, ah. So what I want to do is, because we hear this term a lot, we got to use positive behavior supports, well, let's break out the 3 words. And if you look at the dictionary, you just look at the word positive, it's good, useful, thinking good about qualities or someone, thinking that a good result will happen. It's feeling optimistic, right? Completely certain that something's going to be correct or true. That's positive. Great word. Okay, let's forget about that word for a minute. Now let's look at behavior. Behavior is the manner of conducting oneself, right? Conducting myself. Anything that an organism does involving action and response to stimulation, your environment, right? It's the response of an individual, group, or species to its environment. That's really interesting, isn't it? Supportive, to agree with or approve of, to show that you approve of someone or something by doing something, to give help or assistance to. So when you look at these 3 words separately, you can be positive and supportive for someone else, correct? But can you, looking at this definition, change someone else's behavior? And the answer is you really can't without hurting your relationship with them. That's an intrinsic motivation. You can inspire someone to do something different, but making them change their behavior is manipulation, and you are hurting your relationship with them. So the bad news is the most difficult behavior to change is your own, but the good news is the only behavior you can change is your own. So it's really, we have to look deep within ourselves. So when we look at behavior, we really have to look at it as communication. And there's 3 different approaches here. There's the internal approach that looks at behavior as originating from the individual, including mood, mental health, and character. The external view, where the behavior is a result of the environment, including the physical environment. Then you have the interactional approach, which considers both. And that's what I'm asking you to do when we teach life skills, is you have to look at the internal and the external approach and use more of an interactional approach. When we are working with life skills in autistic individuals, you have to look at everything. Now, as far as compliance versus engagement, this is something that came out in my doctoral research that kind of blew my mind. I was kind of like, because there is a lot of researchers out there who I very much respect, but there's a glitch in some of their research. So Dr. Robin McWilliams, who was based out of Vanderbilt, I don't know where he is now. He does a lot of early intervention stuff, and he did a whole research project on engagement. He has the 9 levels of engagement and how teachers can observe the different levels of engagement of individuals with disabilities or on the spectrum. And what a couple researchers over in Australia came up with was something that really made me think, and it made me think differently, which was really good. And engagement, and this is kind of from an education platform, but it's with anything. Like, I can't see Stacy, Erica, Braden, or Jade at all. I hope you're engaged. And even if I could see you, I see Joseph. Joseph, you look like you're very engaged. However, the only person that knows that you're engaged is you. You can sit a child in the front of the class with their hands on the desk like this, staring at the teacher, but you cannot make them engage in listening to her. You could be thinking about what you're buying at the grocery store. The only person that knows that they're engaged is you. It is not observable. It's an intrinsic feeling. Only you can tell us. So we're using this observable engagement in our research when it's not possible. So we're getting this data, and the only way you're going to be able to tell is to ask the person if they're engaged, if they heard you, if they, they're the only one, and people engage differently. My son engages by sitting in the back of the class at the window so he can look out. Because if you make him look at you, his ears shut off, and he'll tell you that. So if somebody came in, though, they would think, oh, he's not paying attention. He's sitting over there flapping and looking out the window, not paying attention, when actually he's the most engaged that he ever could be in a classroom. The only way we found that out was by asking him. So we really have to think about this very, very differently. Principles of self-determination. My information got wiped off from that. Joseph, I'll make sure I fix that and send you a new one as well. And if anybody has that. Basically, the principles of self-determination are making sure that the autistic individual is driving the process, making up their own goals, that they are the ones also that are held accountable. It's okay for individuals on the spectrum to make mistakes. I think a lot of times we don't let them make mistakes. We put them in a bubble. There's that fear, and there shouldn't be fear. They have to be able to make mistakes. I know that's when I've always learned the most. So we have to be very careful with that in making sure that we're setting them up for success, not failure, and holding them to a high standard, because they can do it. When I hear someone say, well, somebody can't do that, that just tells me they don't know how, and that's okay. But let's take the word can't out of our vocabulary, and you don't give up 5 minutes before the miracle. And then the last thing, again, I'm not going to show you this video, but I thought it was a really great video for you guys to watch about employment, that life skill there, and about our unconscious bias at work and making the unconscious conscious. And really the employment barriers this video will bring out have to do with a lack of belief, value, and attitude. It all stems at the core of how we are interacting and reacting to them. If we want autistic individuals to learn life skills, we have to provide the learning opportunity. We have to provide the right support that they need. They need to drive the process, and they need to be the ones to actually do this. They can shop on their own. They can have an email. They can have a social media page. They can have a presence. They can learn how to do these life skills, but we have to frame up the learning opportunity for them to be able to do that. So that's kind of where we're at. Does anybody have any questions?
They can raise their hand, or I can unmute you. I do have a question. Now, your son is a freshman in college. Is that correct?
It is.
And what does he take a laptop with him in order for him to communicate with the teachers?
That's a great question. Since we're in COVID, all of his classes were virtual. Mm-hmm. So they were through Zoom, and right now I am his communication partner. I'm currently looking for someone to hire to do that. And he uses an iPad. He doesn't like the feel of the keys. He likes the touch screen. Mm-hmm. So I'm his communication partner. I go to class with him, but he uses his iPad to do all of his assignments.
You must be a very proud mother.
I am. He is such an amazing young man. He's also an author of a really good book. And unfortunately, I ran out of copies because a lot of people tell me, well, Adam's just an exception. And he is part of a book project called Leaders Around Me. And it's edited by Dr. Edelyn Pena from California. And it is a compilation of 45 non-speaking autistics from all over the world. It's their autobiographies. And it's a very cool book. And you learn a lot about individuals who are non-speaking, and the capabilities are just unbelievable. And a lot of them are starting to go to college. So the doors are starting to open for them.
Okay. And his siblings must love him to death too. And they help him out and they support him, and he must do the same with them.
Yes, he has 3 younger siblings, so he's the oldest, big brother. He's very protective, and they are ferociously protective of him. I have a daughter Adam's 19, I have a daughter who's 16, daughter who's 14, and then a son who's 11. And they're all very, very close. And yeah, sometimes they have to get on me too, of making sure that I'm holding them to a high standard. You know how siblings are. He can do it. But yes, they work very well together.
Okay. My first email account was in 1995, between 1995 and 1996. So
A long time, isn't it? I mean,
yeah.
I didn't realize that you needed a cell phone now. I mean, they're not even wanting a landline because they want to be able to text you. And I'm like, oh my God, this is putting up another barrier. But fortunately, I'm starting to make some headway with some of the parents, because they're like, oh, I didn't realize he needed a phone. Or I get, well, why does he need a phone? Well, when you start framing up on, well, let me take your phone and your computer. And then they're like, well, no, you can't do that, because then I can't, do anything. But if you think about it, you need an email, don't you, for everything? You have to, that's how you sign up for things.
Yes.
So how can we teach them technology without them having their own email? But when he said to me, I don't know what an email is, and he goes, what's Google? I mean, I looked at him, I'm like, you don't know what Google is? And he goes, no. I don't know. I think we take it for granted. And because of COVID, it's become even more of a technology world. And I'm like, thinking about all these individuals who don't drive, who can learn how to use Uber, who can, you know what I mean? Who can start getting their own rides and not have to rely on other people. How amazing would that be?
My coworker, Miss White, said, in your opinion, how can libraries and library workers be a resource in the objectives and strategies that you propose?
Ooh, that's a great question. Well, does your library, I know some of ours around here provide hotspots.
Yes, they do.
Okay. I think that could be an extremely huge benefit for individuals, because like we give tablets out, but think about tablets. If you're out and about and you're not at a place where they could connect to Wi-Fi, maybe they went to the park or something, having that hotspot and availability that they could, take that out would be amazing. Because a lot of this, you're talking about internet monthly and cell phone monthly bills for people who are on a low income can be really difficult. So I see hotspots. I see maybe some trainings that you guys could possibly do for individuals with disabilities to teach them how to set up an email. It would be really cool, because you guys could do that, right?
Yeah, we could do that. That's my next idea for with my group. I'm going to talk to them about that.
Yes. I mean, like to do, when he looked at me and said, I don't even know what an email is, like just doing, do you know what I mean? A session of explaining what email is, because we take it for granted. We use it for everything. They don't even know what it is. So, what it is, how it could help them, and how it could be a life skill, because you need, if you think about it, I have a Google account. So having that email opens me up to having a calendar, to having, where I can get forms and things like that. Surveys are done online.
Somebody just, Miss White just said, signing up for an email is a tutorial that people can request for Tech Tuesdays.
Okay. Well, and maybe even just setting one up specifically for that demographic. I'm sure you could reach out to some of your organizations who maybe support, like have residential supported places, and have invite them out. Specifically have them come out, or to share how to set up an email so they can hear the information themselves.
Miss White said just sent the
calendar.
Yes, the calendar.
Okay, which is great, but guess what? They probably need an email and everything, right, to get online to be able to. That would be really awesome. And I think the hotspots would be huge for this demographic for you guys to do that, because I know some of our organizations have tapped into the library. Because what's happening is we get the tablets for some of these guys, we use it as a communication device, and they're starting to communicate, and then they go out in public, and guess what? If they're not at a place that does, which a lot of places have Wi-Fi now, I get that, but some don't. So they don't take the tablet with them, and now they lose their voice, and that's not good either.
Aola is my tech person for my team, so she knows a lot more about this stuff
Awesome.
than anybody in the Jersey Public Library. She's very tech savvy.
Okay.
Iola.
Yeah, and Iola, if you guys have any ideas as well, I've been trying to research, because asking, getting an email is one thing, because that is free as long as we can tie it to a cell phone number. And that's been the difficulty, because I don't want them tying it to a cell phone number that's of a staff that might quit and then they're gone, because then you're having issues getting access to it. So I don't want to force or put on that extra burden of having to pay for a cell phone monthly for some of these guys. So we're working through that barrier. Maybe you have some ideas I know there's some apps out there where you can supposedly get a free phone, or it's like 99 cents a month, like a free phone number, but I've heard they're not real reliable. And I don't know if you have some insight into that. But any information you have might be helpful for me too, because I'm trying to figure that out.
I know a lot of people use Cricket. You ever see those commercials for Cricket? And and then there's always those ads in the Parade magazine that people see for senior citizens. But I think my tech support guru knows more about that than I do. So I can hook you up with her, and she can
Awesome.
talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm all for sharing resources, I'll tell you, because it's going to take a team effort to get all of this going. I mean, I am happy to see that, I think people are starting to understand at a very high level that infrastructure, broadband, internet access, and everything everyone needs to have access to that in order to adult.
Okay.
So,
anybody have any questions for Miss Dr. Morgan? You can raise your hand, or I can unmute you. Just let me know, or something in the chat. Lauren Fisher, do you have a question?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Rachel.
hi, how are you?
I'm sorry I got in a little late.
You're fine.
I had to borrow my daughter's iPad.
Yeah. Okay. Let me see. Let me ask. Jade Garcia, do you have a question? No, nobody has any questions. This is the best time to ask any questions.
Well, hopefully you guys found all of this very helpful. I know it's kind of a unique perspective and a unique presentation, maybe not what you were thinking, but I hope that it was worth you guys joining me and maybe kind of coming at it from a different angle. And hopefully it was some new information that maybe, you just hadn't thought of before.
Before everybody goes, I have an announcement to make. On April 30th, 2021 at 6 p.m., which is next Friday, following Friday, it's the final Autistic Alliance Month event called Parenting on the Spectrum. And if you go to our website, you can sign up and join and talk to Dr. O, who's a global advocate and educator and autistic person of color in a neurodiverse, multicultural, different family. So she'll talk to you, or and discuss different things. So it's supposed to be a very interesting event. Go to our website, which is www.jclibrary.org. You go to a series of events, and you'll see April 30th at 6 p.m. and you sign up. Or you
Rachel,
can.
will you post that
Yes,
I
I'll
will.
post that.
or text it to me or something?
I sure
Okay.
will.
I will, yes, I will send that off. I gave it to Dr. Morgan before. She'll send it off to everybody else. And I think that is it for today. And
Well,
thank
thank
you
you
very
for
much.
all you do, Joseph, in the New
Mhm.
Jersey Public Library. You guys do some amazing programs I wish some of our libraries would do around here. So congrats and hats off to you guys for being innovative.
Oh, you watched some of our programs.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Thank you very much. And thank you for all you do. And thank you, and tell your son good luck in the
I
future.
will. I
Mhm.
will. Thank you so much.
All right. Everybody have a nice day.